Welcome into a brand new edition of the ESPN PR podcast. I'm your host, Alex Feuz, and we are joined by the one and only Sunday Night Baseball analyst, Eduardo Pérez. Eduardo will be on the call for the Home Run Derby and the MLB Draft upcoming this weekend. The draft on Sunday, the Home Run Derby on Monday. On the Derby, he'll be working alongside Carl Ravitch, Todd Frazier, Buster Olney, and Alden Gonzalez. Eduardo, walk us through what's your excitement level heading into the Home Run Derby this year?
It's huge. It's huge every year, Alex. If you look at so far the field that is out there, it's a really interesting group of guys. And now with so much data that we have, and I know that we're also doing the Statcast version of this, but you cannot help. It's part of who we are now, right? To be able to look at bat speed, to be able to look at launch angle, and to be able to just look at the pure power. If one wants to just go with the purity of all of this, I think it's great. I think it's great that Pete Alonso, who lost last year, everyone thought, he's coming back to defend his title, proclaimed, and rightfully so, because he's been the champ a couple times. It was taken away from him last year by Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and he wants it back. And I think it is awesome to be able to see that a guy that loves this event is back at it. And then we have some new faces and some new young blood. And I think that's also great because we get Bobby Witt Jr. And Bobby Witt Jr., the first time I saw him in a home run contest was actually in Washington, in D.C., when he was still using that aluminum bat, and it was flying like crazy before the draft. And to be able to have him along with Hines, who now is in the big leagues with the Reds, they were going at it. And now we get to go to Texas and we get to see him as a big leaguer compete in this event. I'm not going to put anything past any of these guys, including Gunnar Henderson.
We'll get into the new stars a little bit later on in the podcast, but there are new rules this Home Run Derby. How can that kind of change the scene this coming Monday?
It's I like using the imperfect word of strategery, right? So the strategy for this event is unlike any other. I think we've averaged more than 40 swings per time. So now it's not only timed, but it's also a max of swings. So it's not just about the strategy that the player's going to use, but also who's going to throw to them and at what distance are they going to be able to throw, because not every pitch is made perfect right down the middle where they want it. So we'll be able to see their strengths. We'll be able to see their weaknesses, and I think that's going to play big time.
What do you think this Home Run Derby means to baseball?
I think it means a lot because it ties in generations, right? It ties in that that person that loves the purity of the baseball game with the power, but at the same time, it ties the grandfather to the grandson. It's time for storytelling. It's time for, I remember when so-and-so happened. I remember the 05 one. I remember the Josh Hamilton one. I remember the Ken Griffey Jr. one in 95. You can go back and you can tell stories to your from one generation to another, and it ties families together. And you know that there's going to be an outcome where we probably haven't seen before. And with these new rules, I think this is what actually makes it interesting year after year.
We mentioned the new stars in the Derby, like Gunnar Henderson, like Bobby Witt Jr. How can the Derby help show just how great the game of baseball is with these young stars rising?
Well, right. There's 30 teams, and not all of them are big markets. And sometimes we fall under the premise that the great players are just in the big markets. Well, they're in the smaller markets as well. And I think this is their time to be able to shine. This is their time to be able to be and show their brand of baseball and to show their skill set. And because of it, I'm all for it. I'm all for a player. I remember when Salvador Perez was in it, and people were like, "Wait a second, this guy can also mash." And it was in Colorado. Unfortunately for him, he was in the same group as Pete Alonso. In today's rules, he would pass to the next round because it's the top four home run guys. So I think this is the new rules are great, but having the young player logistically from different areas of the country, I think is even greater.
We mentioned you'll be broadcasting with Todd Frazier, who will be making his debut broadcasting in the Home Run Derby. What kind of advice would you give to Todd Frazier?
Well, I've done this event in three different languages, and I'm about to do it in a fourth different language with Todd Frazier, I think. So my first home run derby was done actually with Ernesto Jerez in Spanish, which was unbelievable because he's a great call. He's got a great call for home runs. So this event is actually made beautiful also for deportes in general, but also I was able to call it in the language of Statcast. And that was also a great event as well. Next to Mike Petriello, Jason Benetti, we were the original three, right? That's the way I call it. That's the way I see it. And I was pumped up for that event to see, and it changed me. It changed me. So that language of baseball changed me. Then obviously the one on E1 on ESPN, this one that I've been doing with Carl, and and now with Todd Frazier. I think I'm going to learn new words. I think I'm going to learn new words. I don't know if they're going to be all perfect or imperfect, but I don't care because the energy that Todd Frazier brings and always brought to the field and brings to the microphone. I've seen it in the Little League World Series. I want to see that same energy, that same originality, that same person that we see off camera. I believe we're going to see it on camera. I think it's going to be a great trio.
And you'll also be part of the robust coverage on ESPN of the first round of the MLB Draft. How fun is that for you to kind of, you'll be seeing the rising stars right now in Major League Baseball and then the future the night before?
That's the part. This is the one that I always circle, right? You know, you have a circle guy in a lineup, you have a circle moment in a game. The draft is the circle moment. Why? Because I mean, we're calling these guys out, and next thing you know, they're in the big leagues a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later. This is an impactful, and I think every year it's going to get better and better. The players it's a heavy college draft this year in the top rounds. So we're doing our best to get every work done. Phil Orleans is supplying all the information. That's our boss, is supplying all the information for us to be able to have. Um, Next to Chris Burke and Kyle Peterson, Kylie McDaniel, and then Carl being the quarterback, I think is phenomenal. Jess will be telling the stories of the players. I think this is a really good group of guys, and then produced by Greg Kiley, who's been doing an unbelievable job year after year with this event. This is not easy. And we're breaking down guys that we know are going to be the future of the game. And that's why this is a really exciting day for me this coming Sunday.
When does the preparation start for you for the MLB Draft?
Oh man, it hasn't ended. I think it starts immediately. Look, the Perfect Game Nationals, the PG Nationals, were this past week in Arizona for next year's draft, not this year's draft, for next year's draft. And I'm already starting to collect a list of the high schoolers for that. The why? Because I know that's our future. So you better be embedded in what's going on from the ground up. That was just done in Arizona. I follow the college rounds as well, and I think we're all working together to understand that the grassroots is actually a very important element of who Major League Baseball is now and will be later.
And then again, you're also a Sunday Night Baseball analyst alongside Carl Ravitch, David Cohn, and Buster Olney. We're about the halfway mark at the All-Star break. What's been your highlight so far of Sunday Night Baseball this season for you?
You know what? I think I'd be accused of being guilty if I say that it's just one. I think every time we get to sit in one of those three spots in the chair to be able to call the game for the audience that is looking to see their stars and to see where baseball is at that moment in that state is important for us. I take it that 1 week of being look. Whenever I can, all of a sudden on Sunday, I get to sit next to Shohei Ohtani and talk to him. That's a highlight for me. I get to see Aaron Judge and have conversations with them. That's a highlight for me. Whenever I get to see and talk to any big leaguer, and it not necessarily has to be a superstar, that's a highlight for me. In this case, you know, I like seeing the rising stars of Christopher Sanchez, who at the beginning of the season, no one knew who he was. Or better yet, Elliot Ramos, who was a top prospect, and all of a sudden he's an all-star. I mean, those stories you cannot make up. And I think day in and day out, every Sunday night, we're going to see something new, something we haven't seen. And then we can prepare all we want, and I'm preparing right here, right now. We can prepare all we want, but I'm very much sure that we're going to see something tonight that we haven't seen in the last few Sundays or even the last few games.
Eduardo, before we get to the Fuse Fast Five round, it just hit me. You've grown up around baseball. Your father, Tony Perez, was a Hall of Famer, and just hear you speak how the highlights of either talking to Judge or Ohtani or even just a Major League Baseball player, how after all these years spending around baseball, how is it still new and exciting to you?
It is. It is. Look, I look at baseball and I know that I'm where I am because of baseball. And I'm not saying that because it was what I did for a living. It's what my father did for a living as well. It's what put food on our table. It's what put a roof over our head. It's not just the major leagues. It's the winter ball as well. It's the grassroots as well. I love the game because it's a challenge. I love the game because you don't have to be 6'8". You don't have to be 5'4" to be successful in this game. You can be any size, any shape. You work at your skill set, and not everyone is built equal. And that's why it's like a game of chess for me. And it's a wonderful canvas if you were to draw it, because it's not just about the players. It's not just about the front office. It's about the people around it that make this game special. And whenever I go to a ballpark, that's what I love about being able to go in through the gates and seeing people that don't even have a uniform on, but understand how valuable this game is to family. And baseball, to me, is family.
Eduardo, this is my favorite part of any interview I do. It's the Fuse Fast Five. It's 5 quick questions. Are you ready?
Oh, boy. I hope I don't blow a fuse.
If you could host a podcast or radio show with anyone in your phone, who are you choosing and why?
And this is supposed to be fast?
Yes, it's supposed
to. Anyone on my phone?
Anyone. Pick one.
Quick, Charles Barkley.
Oh, that'd be great. That would be a fun one. You have that you are a Peloton rider in your bio. Who is your favorite instructor?
Tunde.
Okay, I like it. You have been a part of the cleat moments where we are gifting on Sunday Night Baseball new custom cleats. What's been your favorite cleat so far that we've given to a player this year?
Oh, man, every single one of them so far has been great. To make me choose, probably the first one, because it was the first one, and it was probably Freddie Freeman's, but Gunnar Henderson's was awesome as well, even though he struck out all the time. But yeah, I would have to go with the first one, Freddie Freeman.
Have you ever participated in a home run derby yourself as a player?
No, but I was challenged as a coach. You got 5 shots to hit one out, and I hit one out of my first one, and I dropped the bat and I walked off.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. The fourth one, obviously you've worked with Carl Ravitch for many years now. What have you learned most about working with Carl?
How attention to detail he is. How he's our Magic Johnson, where he just dishes and sets you up beautifully for that. Could be the 3-point shot, or it could be for the slam dunk.
And then the last one for you, what are you looking forward to most this upcoming week?
In the All-Star game, in the All-Star festivities, I'm looking, the thing that I look forward the most is actually looking in the stands and seeing kids see their stars. That hits home.
Well, Eduardo, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You'll be all over the country the next few days, so appreciate you taking the time in advance of the Home Run Derby, MLB Draft, and then the game.
Appreciate it. The fuse box.